I would like to welcome you all to the second panel of the 2021 SMART4SEA Forum. In this panel, we will be talking about the smart shipping applications. The discussion about digital transformation is not new. Shipping industry managed to switch from the traditional way of operations into a modern and smart environment. Although digitization was firstly met with skepticism, now industry acknowledges that new technological developments are key to improving efficiency in every front. We have drivers and barriers through this transition. We have the black swan effect of the pandemic. The pandemic, as we discussed in the previous panel, acted as an educator for the industry. An educated industry makes educated decisions at the end of the day. In this session, we would like to see from different stakeholders how the real-life applications of smart shipping is, how digitization is applied in real life, and would like to discuss which parts of the industry are moving towards the right direction, what should the industry need to start doing different in order to prepare, how is digital technology changing the seafarers and ashore staff roles, and what should be the industry priorities to provide digital applications for seaboard use. Now, in this panel, we are joined by Valentinos Steliou. Valentinos is the product manager for SafeBridge. James Lee, who is the business development and solutions manager for digital learning, head of academy of Wärtsilä Voyage. Wärtsilä was the winner, if you've seen the awards earlier on, of the SMART4SEA Training Award for their innovative application of taking the simulation to the cloud, something we discussed in the previous panel as well, because it makes the life of a lot of stakeholders easier instead of paying a huge capex to have something like a service. We have also Ariel Risholm-Seether, head of business development for Navfleet for Navtor, Dimitris Gissimopoulos, who is the business development manager for RINA, and last but not least, Zois Dragaris. Zois is the representative of Euronav, the only representative in this panel from a ship manager, and he is the procurement and logistics manager, and he has a very interesting presentation of real life from the ship operator perspective. Now, without any further ado, I would like to start away with a presentation. We'll start with Valentinos Steliou. Valentinos, the floor is yours. You have to share your screen and give us your views of where we stand.
Thank you very much, Apostolos. I'm happy to be with everyone today. I hope that every one of you is safe and healthy. It is a pleasure to be here, and even happier to talk about how smarter crewing decisions are a must while we're undergoing a technical evolution. Now, thank you very much, Apostolos. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I hope that everyone is safe and healthy. I'm even more happier that today we're going to talk about smarter crewing decisions while we are undergoing technical evolution and how important those decisions are. First of all, I would like you to imagine that we are a game of chess. You know, the game of chess is a game which is based solely on strategy. The game where the mental exercise component is more significant than the physical component. The game where each opponent is required to make well thought out moves to gain a strategic advantage while at the same time protecting their own interests. For the sake of today's presentation, I would like you to imagine that we together are the player representing the maritime industry, and our opponent are all the external factors which play against and challenge our industry today. So we start our chess game, and as the days go by, we see our industry makes its first yet confident move towards becoming a part of the 21st century. So what do we see? We see the efforts of the digitalization across the entire value chain. We see the evolution in the interconnection between people, vessels, and systems through real-time data exchange. We see also the initiatives to bring autonomous ships, artificial intelligence, process automation, and greener shipping to be our new norm. Our industry confidently yet righteously makes its move towards a new shipping era simply because it keeps the world moving. Now, with great change comes great responsibility. And so our opponent's next move It is a logical consequence that we all acknowledge that the technological evolution has impacted every corner of our industry. Most importantly, it has affected the people working within, whom we must protect as a chess player and defend, our seafarers. Now, our opponent did not waste any time, and with this answering move, brought us a new era where technical competences are not enough to keep the wheel turning. This is an era where a unique set of multidimensional skills is needed to augment automation and, of course, artificial intelligence. So, as our chess match continued in the year 2020, our opponent has struck us with a new surprise move, that of the global pandemic. This was a low blow from our opponent that brought all the crew changes to standstill. While it has caught us off guard, it also helped us see new and emerging opportunities. This is where we're going to stand today. It has shown to us that seafarers who possess strong non-technical skills, such as resilience, communication, flexibility, and problem sensitivity, were able to overcome the challenge and even lead others. It also showed to us that there are seafarers positioned to occupy those evolving roles in the future, and they will hold the future of shipping to stand and hold the industry strong in the face of any problems that might arise in the future. So having realized all this and the importance of non-technical skills, we must now take time to rethink and formulate our strategy before making our next move. So in order to begin, we will ask ourselves, where does the maritime industry stand today with this regard? How equipped is our industry to protect and cater for the seafarer of tomorrow? How equipped is our industry today to identify the skill gaps and help seafarers develop their non-technical skills? You know, answering these questions is key in formulating our new strategy. We want to win. And of course, our next move on the chessboard should be formulated from those key decisions. But let's look at some underlying risks. What are the risks we have in our strategy? Companies that do assess the non-technical skills today use combinations and variations of personality tests or psychometric assessments. Second, we see that although personality tests can show a seafarer being generous or enthusiastic or sincere, these are not of primary significance when working in a hazardous environment. Proactive companies that do assess their crew's non-technical skills are forced to apply various non-industry specific solutions to assess needed skills. We also see that companies that wish to develop their crew's non-technical skills are forced to reach a plethora of training solutions from even from other industries or general solutions to cultivate seafarers' shortcomings. Therefore, what we see in general is that a complete industry-specific solution tailored for each role on the vessel is not utilized by our industry. So while we move rapidly towards adopting the concept of non-technical skills and its application in crewing, we still lack a complete industry and rank-specific solution to assess and develop those skills amongst our seafarers. This in turn poses a strong threat in the effective application of our strategy. So what should be our strategy? In order to uphold our strategy and win, let's paint the ideal scenario, paint the picture of this scenario. So in order to build a crew that is aligned with the demands of the industry of today, companies require the tools that will enable them to have an industry and rank specific overview of each crew member, highlighting their interpersonal competencies and level of cognitive abilities. In such a scenario, we also want to have the ability to compare the assessed seafarers with industry and company established norms in order to identify any potential shortfalls. We want to have the ability to recruit and promote seafarers based on their non-technical skills, preventing potential risks on board, which is very important. But most importantly, we want to have access to address and ensure continuous development and improvement of any identified skill shortcomings in an industry-specific, targeted, and cost-effective manner. I will repeat this: industry-specific, targeted, and cost-effective manner. So by concluding this short dialogue, do we today ensure that our seafarers are adequately competent in their non-technical skills? Have we assessed their non-technical skills and contributed to their continuous development? As stated in the beginning of the presentation, with great change comes great responsibility. It is our and ultimately your decision, your responsibility to ensure that the seafarers are adequately skilled to uphold the evolution of our industry. The next move on the chessboard is yours. What is it going to be? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Valentinos. Now let's move on to our next, let's say, presenter. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Apostolos, and also thank you, Valentinos. We are speaking very much the same language about digitalization and pace of change and skills. So I think neatly enough, what I'll talk about briefly today for a few minutes dovetails nicely into what Valentinos was just speaking of. So to kick off with, I'm with Wärtsilä Voyage. We hope that everybody globally, crews and onshore and technicians and engineers are all doing well and safe and healthy. We're year 2 of the pandemic now, and obviously it's had an impact on digitalization and an acceleration of digitalization in maritime, but I think sometimes we need a bit of a sanity check as to where we're going and what we need to be focusing on. So what the purpose of today is, I'll be doing a little bit of a talk about history, looking backwards, and then looking forward to what we can learn from from other industries. And I'm having difficulty moving my slides. Okay, so very simply put, the Wärtsilä, just to introduce who we are, our philosophy is to apply technology to deliver mariner performance, mariner safety and health, optimize efficiencies of the maritime business, and most importantly, minimize climatic impact. We're looking very focused always on optimization from the fleet side and from the marine education and training side to maximize the learning outcomes of the new and existing mariners moving through the industry. Bottom line is we're delivering mariners equipped to perform in a very rapidly changing digitized maritime industry, which is essentially, as Valentinos said, it is a chess game. It's a question of what move comes next. Let's do a quick look at where we are today. It's 2021. In terms of education and training, very little changed during the first, second, and third industrial revolutions. And what I'm talking about here is the advent of steam, then electricity, mass production, through to mass electronic production, and where we are today, which is the much spoken about fourth industrial revolution, where the cloud and AI and digitization is overwhelming and taking over industries. Now, in the maritime training sector, we've been very focused on traditional classroom education, which hasn't changed much literally since the first industrial revolution, from the chalkboard and the chalk and talk, as they call it, through to some advent of technology through the 70s and 80s. And all throughout that in the maritime training sector, we've been assessing and teaching skills on the job at sea or on shore. So it's very little changed. Now, interestingly, in about 1998, the term e-learning first appeared, which is a bucket term for digitizing training, allowing people to study themselves and delivering it at scale. Where we are today is there's been a gigantic and a massive investment in digital learning technologies outside of maritime for the last 20 years. And our position of Wärtsilä is for our industry, is we can capitalize on this massive investment. So private equity has poured literally hundreds of billions into various startups, many of which failed, many of which have succeeded, who've developed technologies and applications that can help us in maritime. Now I'm talking here about open courses, anywhere, anytime, any device, that's the AWAT phrase, through to learning platforms and whole lifecycle talent management platforms. And where we're getting to is this continuous circle of assessment, of recommendation around the profile of the mariner throughout their life cycle. Again, things that Valentinos touched upon. And the central core of that is the data, which is what we're talking about today, is digitalization. So what does this mean to us? So the corporate world, again, is not a benchmark for us, but it's a producer of investment, it's a producer of technology, and it's a producer of thinking. So digitalization is a tool. What we can do is adapt what the corporate world has done with these tools. The tool is not the solution. Digitalization is an enabler of how we can bend technology to drive performance and health and safety and optimize maritime. What we can probably assume is today we're taking elements of the corporate journey from a mix of different formats and a mix of different platforms, and we've yet to kind of consolidate to where perhaps the higher budget or higher end of town has spent a lot of money and made a lot of mistakes, so we can learn from that. So today the buzzword out there in the corporate banking sector and the insurance and finance sector through to consumer goods, some of the sectors I've worked in, is all about learning in the flow of work. And how does technology, through that cycle of certification and continuous adjustment of learning, adjust to it? I would say that we in maritime have been learning the flow of work since the first industrial revolution. So what are we going to do about it today? The technology exists. So simulation, cloud, which is again very proud that we've won an award, Apostolos, for our work in the cloud, is how we can take this and drive change. But the change is not driven by technology. I keep talking about that. So there's three things we have to look at. Today's modern mariner is digital native. So that graph I showed before about the Industrial Revolution, there's been more change in education and training in the last 10 to 12 months than there has been in 400 years. Last year, and it continues because I've got small children at home over there are 1.8 billion students at home studying. Now those 1.8 range from kindergarten through to tertiary education, and they're entering the workforce. This is normal for them, consuming digital learning and e-learning. Likewise, the Great Masters report this year showed huge increase in the amount of operators and institutes consuming digital learning. But how to make this work is the key thing, is if you don't have broadband, you can't do digital learning at scale. So we can see some interesting charts there from Cisco looking at the growth in fixed broadband and also the growth in cloud as an enabler. 50% of the world's data will be in the cloud by 2025. What does that mean for us in terms of transferring skills in maritime? The data from 2020 at Wärtsilä, where we converted about 1,000 days of traditional face-to-face training digitally, is we learned that distraction rates and retention rates have changed. And that's the biggest dilemma, where the promises of digital need to be carefully filtered. What we've learned, and it kind of aligns with what Valentinos was talking about, is that scenario-based assessment and training to see the competencies as well as the behaviors are key. How do we assess responses? And then how do we interact and observe that? Again, technology isn't going to fix this. Technology merely enables us and gives us a platform to scale it. Some interesting work in soft skills actually done by PwC, which match exactly our data from Wärtsilä in 2020, is that it takes longer to train in the classroom. It takes shorter using virtual reality, which is one of our new cloud opportunities. And cloud e-learning is somewhere in the middle. But we have to overlay that with the distraction rate. So what is actually happening? VR has a much lower distraction rate. Classroom has a much higher distraction rate. So if we're going to be transferring skills at scale through digital learning in the maritime sector, we found that the best and optimal solution is to simulate reality in the cloud through simulation, through cloud and human interactions, the mentorship and virtual reality. Again, the technology is an enabler and it's an amplifier. So where we're getting to is truly learning in the flow of work in maritime for the life cycle of the mariner is essentially the future of maritime training. So there's really three columns there. We're shifting at the moment. We know that maritime training can save operational expenses. We know that the modern mariner coming out of school and cadet schools now is a digital native and they want training anywhere, anytime, any device. We're combining that with the other work Wärtsilä does, which is around autonomous shipping and shipboard equipment for vessel optimization, and then continuously assessing and performing that in an adaptive manner. So our message back is we're in this together, we're on this journey, and technology isn't the solution, technology is the enabler, and it's a question of how we make the recipe work best to drive the best ROI for learning in maritime. Back to you, Apostolos, and I'll unshare screen.
Thank you. Okay, I did that. Thank you very much. Let's move on with Ariel. Ariel, the floor is yours. Please, you can share your screen.
Thank you very much. Just hold on. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and also thank you very much for the interesting views and the presentations before me. I think we're on the same page and share many of the same views when it comes to let's say, technology as a tool and as an enabler. And especially for us who is making, let's say, technology, we make solutions for customers. And it's also important to have this in the back of our head, that this is just a tool and just an enabler. I would like to use the opportunity to say something about the ship owners' everyday challenges. Because when we make new products, when NAVTOR makes solutions for our customers, we need to discuss with our customers, because one of our missions is and has always been to simplify the operational tasks for our customers. So when we develop new e-navigation solutions, we are very much in close contact with our customers. We do it together with them, so we ensure that we comply with our customers' demands. And this has been and still is very important for NAVTOR. So to understand their demands, we also need to understand some of their challenges. What are their pain points? Are they struggling to comply with the regulatory demands? Are they struggling to increase profit and business performance? Or are they struggling because they have too much administration for that sake? So when we developed our latest, let's say, technology or solution, the NavFleet, which is a vessel and fleet monitoring tool, we had to include our customers so they could also give us their inputs and guidelines for this product. And we also included them during the process, so we got feedback and were directed to the correct path. And during our discussions with them, we discovered a few repetitive challenges which they all had. And these repetitive challenges were about let's say, the difficulties when it comes to environmental efficiency, the total burden of administration, how to prove the performance, and troubleshooting. And we also discussed with them what kind of solutions they would like to see to face these challenges. And again, this is very important for NAVTOR, since we need to be in contact with the customers to develop something they actually find useful. When it comes to the environmental efficiency, we all have a responsibility to reduce the carbon footprint. And that also includes NAVTOR. We do not consume fuel oil, but we develop e-navigation solutions. And our contribution in that matter is to make the tools the industry can use so they can comply with, let's say, the increased amount of regulatory demands, but also to comply with the responsibility each one of us have to reduce the carbon footprint. If we look back into history, the original focus for the IMO was to prevent the marine pollution by oil. And that resulted in a MARPOL convention in 1973. And over the years, this has changed to include a much wider range of measurements to prevent pollution, such as chemicals, garbage, sewage, air pollution, and also emissions from ships. Now it's mandatory for all ships to have energy efficiency design index. They need to have a ship energy efficiency management plan, and much more. You will find indexes and indicators for almost everything on board a vessel. And to handle this, we need to monitor all our emissions. We need to monitor all the fuel consumptions, and we also need to report to the regulators, like the EU MRV and the IMO DCS. And the challenge here is actually to comply with all the regulations, but you also need to know and to prove that you actually are complying with the regulations. So a much stronger focus, stronger environmental focus, will for sure be good for the environment, but it will also be good for business. Because your focus on vessel optimization, that will definitely lower your costs and increase your business performance. When it comes to the burden of administration, we see that the increasing operational complexity and the greater regulatory demands, and also the competitive commercial landscape out there, requires an environment with strong focus on reporting and documentation. In addition to all the regulators, you also find many different stakeholders in this business that requires information and documentation. And all these parties, they place an extra burden on the vessel, on the seafarers, but also on the people in their offices who already have a great deal of work to do. So after the discussions with our customers to develop our new products, we learned that greater integration of products, greater integrations of systems and data, in combination with increased automation of tasks, that would be really, really helpful. And they also mentioned that that combination could probably also reduce the possibility for human errors. When it comes to proving performance, we see that many stakeholders, they have different type of interest in how the vessel performs. And all these parties, they place extra burden of proof on the vessels, the proof of performance. And to meet all these warranties and guarantees with promises related to fuel consumption and speed, you need good tools. You need tools that will both prove but also improve your performance. You need to prove the performance for your stakeholders, and you also need to improve the performance to increase business performance and profit. And the key for good business is transparency. Transparency in your operations and transparency in performance, together with good relationships between the different business partners. When it comes to troubleshooting, we have many different types of customers out there. Navtor has approximately 7,000 vessels using our services, and a lot of different ship owners with different requirements, different types of doing the operations. Some customers would like to see more, let's say, increased connectivity. They would like to see more digitization, more digitalization, and more integration as well as automation. Whilst others, they would like to see more hands-on manual control, like we already have, because they are more confident in the existing systems. We, Navtor, and also the rest of us as suppliers, we need to listen to their wishes and their needs. But we also have a responsibility to guide our customers into the future, because we have more hands-on control of the technology very often, not always, but very often. Because we also see that many of our customers, they have an increased focus on technology. They have increased focus on integration, and they are also pushing us as manufacturer of good solutions to be more creative and think smarter. And also for digitization, there are many different suppliers of information out there. Very often you will find many sensors on board the vessel. And more or less everything is possible to get all information from these sensors. So it's just a matter of the data transmitting and receiving speed in the end on board the vessel. And the challenge with all this separate system is to find some kind of common platform, because there's so many separate systems. So very often they actually result in dual work in order to utilize the systems best and to utilize the best functionalities in all the systems. So integration is definitely the key, is the feedback we have received and also what we have found out. One single platform, one single ecosystem where all information is available and could be utilized and presented in easy ways. We also need to respect that in good teams, there are different personalities, different level of knowledge, and different backgrounds. And we need to have this in mind when we develop new products, and we need to make our products easy to use and easy to understand. So digitization and integration are definitely the keys to monitor efficiently, but they're also the keys that gives you the best prerequisites to take good proactive decisions. There we are. So all in all, based on our discussions with our customers and our responsibility to guide our customers, we are quite sure that we need to think smarter, and we also think that smarter data utilization and integration will be a good answer to some of the challenges out there. So if you want to comply with regulations, if you want to reduce emissions, reduce costs, increase monetary profit, and increase performance, the total integration and monitoring is key. And that, my friends, concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Now, let's move on with Dimitris. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Hello from my side as well. Do you see my presentation?
Yeah, you have to.
Is it in full screen?
Yeah, that's okay, fine.
Okay. First of all, Apostolos, I would like to thank you for the opportunity you give me to talk about RENA's view and how we are thinking of digitalization in the shipping industry. I will show you briefly the view of RENA, but also I would like to take some of the few words of the last 2 slides of Arild, that the integration between all these systems and all these softwares that are running on vessels is the key factor for, let's say, the shipping industry to embrace much better all these different kind of solutions. And we are in this direction. First of all, some few words about RENA. Of course, it's a well-reputed class society with over 150 years of experience, with a presence worldwide and many offices around the globe. As I told you before, we have this platform that we have developed the last decade. It's we developed it ourselves. It's a cloud-based and web-based platform, and it combines, apart from our own designed applications, such as the performance, MRV reporting, electronic logbooks, IHM maintenance software. It can also interface and talk with a lot of other applications, as it is an open source one, and can create interface with many other applications and softwares. Today I will talk to you briefly about the electronic logbooks. Well, the electronic logbooks is a recent trend in the shipping industry. It replaces the traditional hard copy of the logbooks. It's in our suite of electronic logbooks, we have all of them available. The oil record book, part 1, part 2, emissions, ballast, cargo, deck and engine, radio, record book. But also someone can manage also the seals and some environmental items through this application. Anyone can easily understand that when the crew on board fills electronically an electronic logbook, it has plenty of benefits, let's say. First of all, it's the live data that the office can see and can have a real synchronization with the ship and see the actual and the real-time data that has been recorded from the vessel. Of course, the office can monitor the whole fleet on a live streaming mode. And as someone can understand very easily, this kind of electronic way of filling in the logbooks is error-proof. It has a backup. It's always available in the cloud. We believe that it's a user-friendly. It's much friendlier to the user than the traditional logbooks, and it follows all the compliance with the MPC regulations that needs to be followed. Of course, the electronic logbooks should be a tailor-made application. It should follow the piping of the vessels. in order to give instructions to the crew to do specific operations from one tank to another, and also that can validate all the entries and gives reliability on the data, which is also a MARPOL compulsory requirement. And in our view, the way that the electronic logbooks can benefit also the crew is that can reduce the burden and the time that the crew on board has to give in order to fill in the logbooks. Also, through the electronic logbooks, someone can manage the ECP compliance matters, such as seal and seal points. Some environmental items also could be monitored, and can calculate dislodge as well. Another factor that I believe that's very important is that the learning module that have this software that can give the possibility to the crew to be educated, to be trained for the electronic logbooks through the web. It's always there, and someone can go every now and while in the e-learning module and see again and again how should fill in the operations in case finds any difficulty in the filling in of the operations needed. In regards to the regulatory framework that has the electronic logbooks, IMO said from 1st of October 2020 that there would not be any objection from the flag administrations in order to, no objection for using the electronic logbooks from the shipping companies. Also has posted some official guidelines how should the electronic logbooks should be. And many flag administrations the last year, mostly, the last 2 years to be honest, have slowly starting approving the electronic logbooks. And in RENA we have approached many of the flag administrations, and we have a series of approvals. Of course, as I told before, the NPC 312 should be met in the electronic logbooks, and these guidelines are in terms of the ability to meet the regulations under MARPOL. Of course, as we are a classification society, we update the electronic logbooks with the recent regulations and updates that come into force, and in many cases we know them beforehand, so to be proactive. Our solution is security. Is secure. It stores the data in a very secure way, and also provides backup in case of an emergency. Here we see some of the flag administrations that have already approved our electronic logbooks. Of course, we have Australia, Marshall Islands, Sweden, Luxembourg, Cyprus, recently approved, Malta, recently approved as well, Liberia, and many others are to follow in the approval process. In regards to the security of our solution gives up to 5 configurable levels of signature when someone wants to submit an operation. Of course, the last authorizations can be given from the master, and through the whole process, the system reports who did what, and as any of the users has a personal PIN code and types his personal PIN code every time that finishes an operation. Also, another way of authentication and signature could be met through the biometric recognition, through the fingerprint. As our solution is a cloud-based one, we have real-time data stream ashore. There is a high availability also of the onboard installation. Our data are encrypted and decrypted with a private key, and we provide a tamper-proof code to each record on the database. Also, there is a possibility to link all the records of the operations through the software through blockchains. One example of the blockchain could be a public one called Ethereum, which is defined as a decentralized and distributed ledger that records the provenance of digital assets. And it has been immutable in many of in any attack. Here you see the interface of the first page, let's say, that someone sees when opens up the electronic logbooks of RINA. We believe that it's a user-friendly environment, and this is also the feedback that we get from our customers as well. In regards to the interface, when someone wants to sign an operation, then another window pops up with a small summary of the operation in order to view, let's say, the key points that has been inserted in the operation and see that everything is fine before using his own PIN code and finalize the mentioned operation. As I told you before, the electronic logbooks are following the hard copy logbooks ones. So any record that has been made from the crew is being reported in the printout version of each operation. And also even the deleted operations are very clearly identifiable in the printout, having this line, a cross line on the text. So all the entries of the users of the software could be recorded, and nothing could be changed, let's say, in the afterwards, or nothing can be lost.
Dimitri, you have less than 1 minute, eh?
Yes, we have a high availability installation and also a backup. And it's also continuously, the system generates a PDF format for both PCs on board and ashore. This is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dimitris, very much. And now let's move to Zois. Zois, the floor is yours.
Okay. Let me put it also in slide mode. Now you see the screen? Full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I'm very delighted to participate in this panel. And Apostolos, really congratulations for connecting the dots, because such forums reveal to suppliers and shipowners the dynamics of digitalization. COVID for sure was an accelerator of digitalization. Interesting presentation from the panelists. I can keep, for example, what Valentino said about strategy, James about the possibilities for training that we can learn also from the corporate learning and adapt, Arnold about the integration, which is very important, and listen to the voice of the customer. And last but not least, a wonderful example by Dimitris on logbooks and how we can solve some administration effort. So it's a burden and a privilege to represent the shipping community, the ship owners. I'm working for Euronav. In Euronav, we have decided that we like to be part of the solution and not to adopt the wait and see strategy for digitalization. We work actively in various fronts, from connecting sensors and sending the data in our office, make meaningful results out of it. And one key thing for us also is to understand and connect suppliers and the business needs. So under the capacity of procurement manager, we like also to digitalize procurement and understand more our suppliers and connect more with them. If we go very fast on the procurement evolution from 90s until 20s, we see 4 distinct eras. First, 90s start to be a more professional, let's say, function to the tenders, target strategic sourcing. And then 2008, the global recession hits in, where the cost control and OPEX became very important, but at the same time, we see also the technology post-deflate year by year, reaching maybe 2014, then starts the digital revolution, disrupts mainly in the land industry, not in the shipping. And the last year, also due to the COVID, procurement evolves and reinvent his capabilities as a function to be more as a service, use cognitive even analytics. So someone will ask or question why to digitalize procurement in a shipping company. Because first of all, we can automate repetitive tasks with RPAs. So we reduce the FTEs, full-time equivalents, and boost efficiency and reduce cost, do things more fast. With real-time insights, because a lot of data exists within procurement, always, and analytics and artificial intelligence, we can give some more support to the stakeholders. And with data models we used to have, we enrich day-to-day operations and help, again, the business with decision-making. But it's very also important that transform buyers' interaction with suppliers, make ecosystem, so we increase the collaboration. Now we cannot only operate and interact with our own information, but also with data ecosystems, so connected suppliers' data and ship owners' data, adding capabilities and guide business decisions, and not simply just transactions. In digital transformation procurement, we see 2 aspects, the operating model and the technology evolution. Digital skill development is very important because we want to adopt and to understand the new era. And the digital ecosystem is maybe what Ali said, an integration of things. And we aspire that procurement will be an innovation catalyst. And then we have the tools, let's say, source-to-pay platforms, more agile, more clever, even e-auctions, things that maybe suppliers that don't like, but for sure create a transparency. Robotics process automation in order to abandon repetitive and administrative tasks, and powerful analytics, going even to cognitive analytics, that can give real-time information, analyze things, and do fast decision-making. I will go to 2 practical examples, because I don't want to keep a lot the presentation to move more on discussion among us. So we use analytics for monitoring. A use example. Each supplier has different lead times, but the lead times of a spare part, maybe this delay a vessel on the maintenance or something important. So we take all the data now and we analyze with algorithms the lead time so we can prioritize the request from the vessels and support and be more agile with our supply chain towards the vessel. Another example is something with RPAs. We have done numerous projects. I cannot disclose for sure, we don't do it alone and advertise to the supplier or the provider. But for example, we have done the lubricants total cost of ownership. What was the problem is the vessels are moving, different prices in different ports, different levels on board the vessels, and always someone to keep in a big fleet to take a look and say, okay, we have to supply in this port and not to miss the opportunity. So instead of doing this, a robot now is checking daily the schedule of the vessels from operations department, then compares prices with best porting lifting patterns, with agreed notification interval with suppliers, check the ROB, basically sent daily, and the warning day levels set up with technical, and last but not least, check if there is a request already, and if not, create the draft requisition, send notification to the master and chief engineer for final review. already we have seen, for example, by this, a 3% cost reduction just within 2 months. So for us as a company, it's not a matter anymore why to digitalize. And I believe for a lot of ship owners, but how and when. So the floor is yours, Apostolos.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Thank you for the example, because when I entered shipping approximately 30 years ago, one of the tasks as a superintendent, one of the tasks I was assigned for a fleet of 20 ships was the lubricants. And what you demonstrated with the automated process, and I understand that 3% is a huge amount of money for a fleet of 50 plus vessels that you operate, despite the small percentage. So I would like to start the discussion, because I would like to thank you all for the practical parts of what you demonstrated. I would like to ask to start the discussion saying that we understand that the digital transformation is not new. I would like to ask you, from your view, which parts, which segments of the industry you see moving forward with a better pace on the right direction, and which segments of the industry you see, let's say, more or less stuck, and why? Where do you see this digital transformation to be applied, let's say, easier? Give me your views on that from your point of view, Valentinos.
Thank you, Apostolos. What we see, although our industry has made its moves towards smarter operations a long time ago, as it was shown earlier on from all the presentations, 2020 was the year that challenged this exact shift, and as it was mentioned, its speed. So with expertise in seafarer development as SafeBridge, through training and assessment, we have observed a great change towards online training and its connection to the training matrix of each organization. Now, this has created numerous needs for more data and insights, and I know that by covering those needs, by responding to them, the industry will move forward to this direction. We're already moving forward. So this is what we see moving already forward to the right direction. In the same time, though, while we focus on preserving the technical competencies of the seafarers, we see various mediums come to place, like they have been mentioned, synchronous and asynchronous learning, blended or virtual classrooms. But we are stagnated a little bit on the non-technical skills with that we need to focus. It's a new focus and clarity is not there yet. The companies involved, they don't know what to ask, what to require, and what data they need, because it's a new it is a new need. But historically, we see that our industry will adjust, adapt, and prevail, like always. So, but we still see that we lack a little bit.
Okay, James.
I would agree very much with Valentinos. I think part of the reason, just speaking to the second part of where industries get stuck sometimes, is perception. It actually also links into Zoish's presentation about digital procurement, because there's a perception that spending another layer of money on digital training is going to reduce profit and reduce margin. Obviously, we can show in our industry the value proposition that scalable digitalization of training does, but when we have to shift a perception to put it towards digital training as software as a service, and that has a procurement implication on the OPEX. So it's gone away from being a CapEx heavy investment to an OPEX investment. I think as well as that, there is trailblazers, and there's also not resistance, but a lack of, I think, investment on our industry's behalf, the digital training side, to link competencies, to link the performance of mariners and onshore folks with the optimization of the fleet, which is where we spend an awful lot of time focused on, is to overcome that barrier and drag some parts of the industry forward by creating this virtuous link between port operations, ship traffic operations, onboard operations, digitizing some, and then augmenting the skills of the humans. So it's a question of we're stuck a bit sometimes not piecing it all together.
Okay. Ari?
I think we need to see it in, let's say, in different segments, because if we look at the hardware industry, for instance, let's say the equipment on board, the navigation equipment, our experience is that this is actually pushed, the new technology is pushed by the companies having the money to invest in new technology, that would like to see new functionalities and new features. And we also see increase in, let's say, that things needs to look good if we look at the hardware as well. So we can see that the navigation equipment has been developed to look good, but also have much better functionalities. And we also see better integration of the navigation equipment. If we look at the software, let's say, side of this one, like Navtor is supplying, our customer, we experience that there is an increase in interest to be a part of the development. There is an increase in willingness to look for good solutions. And we also see that some of the motivation is, of course, to comply with all the increased burden of administration as well. And if we go back to 2020, when we saw that COVID exploded, we all had to think in new ways. And the increased need for connectivity between, let's say, like we're doing now, doing these kind of conferences, has also increased. But increased connectivity with the vessel also open up new types of looking at things. We can look at new possibilities and new functionalities. So I think our site has been much more opened over the last years to see more opportunities as well.
Okay, Dimitris?
So from our experience right now, we see also training that is very important for the shipping companies. And we don't see only the training as a certificate, let's say, for the crew, but also some internal training that the shipping companies can do through these digital tools. I mean, the augmented reality or virtual reality tools that can familiarize the seafarers before going on a vessel to know exactly how to navigate through the engine room, let's say. Because there is this technology that a seafarer can have some training sessions before going on board the vessel and see exactly how is the engine room of the vessel, how is all the places that will be in the next months of his life. Also, hardware, of course, the recent years has been improved very much. And I believe that gives more and more accurate data to be used in all these kind of softwares that are being used from the shipping industry in terms of the digitalization. To be honest, I don't see that this any sector to be stuck of this digital transformation. I see only that in some cases the willing of the shipping companies is not, very strong in order to adopt all these kind of new solutions and embrace them in the daily operations and see the necessity in some of the cases.
I would like to inject some reality into our discussion. I've left on purpose Zoe speaking last because he has to say the last word. Zoe, what's your views towards that? I mean, where do you see most benefit out of these practical applications? I'm sure you've done more than what you presented over here, and you do a lot of this stuff in Euronav. So what are your thoughts?
Correct, Apostolos. I will say also as Dimitris, I don't see that parts are stuck, but there are different pace of adoption amongst the ship owners. And there are things that are more easy also for the suppliers to promote because are practical, like trainings. You don't need a big infrastructure. And there are more things that you need, maybe sensors, more data, and are even more difficult to adapt on board the ship. So I see this different pace mainly of the difficulties, even of the technology and integration, even we don't have a common platform. Suppliers use different platforms a lot of times. So, but what I will say as a ship owner is that we need to have a business strategies that adopt and embrace digitalization. This is what we have to do for sure. But we'll be practical as always, but not so skeptical anymore.
Absolutely, absolutely, not so skeptical. But again, as I'm speaking about reality, we have to accept the fact that certain parts of the industry, for example, if you go to the cruise sector, if you go, for example, to the offshore, if you go to the containers, they are, if you go to the listed companies, they are facing different challenges than, let's say, smaller operators doing local trading, or maybe short sea operators, and so on and so forth. The industry is not uniform. Even if we're talking about, for example, cruise operators, it's different. You know, the needs of the carnivals of the world are totally different from the needs, let's say, of a small local operator who is doing, let's say, a local trade with a couple of ships, 100, 200 packs, and so on and so forth. The same applies for the container sector, and so on and so forth, for the ports, etc., etc. Now,
absolutely, yes, yeah. Absolutely, I will agree with that, 100%.
I'm just saying, I'm fan of being, you know, having practical discussions, not discussing about abstract things. And my next question is about, you know, injecting some reality. Digitalization is not invented in shipping. Actually, to be honest, most of the things we use now were existent and evident before the crisis, and we had to, you know, take a crash course on what is going on in other industries and adopt in our industry. I would like to ask you, do you see any lessons to be learned from other industries or lessons to be learned from our industry with respect to digitization? So I would like to start with Valentinos.
Lessons to be learned from other industries. Of course, we have to learn, for example, from how everything was adopted from the aviation. Where in aviation, because safety, it's even more at a higher standard than us, and for obvious reasons, we saw that digitalization, assessing competencies, having competencies and data on them, they were where we started to make progress, and we had, as you very well said, a crash course. They were there. So although now they're facing a different challenge due to the situation, they were where we are going now. What other industries will need to learn from shipping, though, is that historically every progress in shipping happens in a most cost-efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. James?
So I think it's interesting. I think I touched upon this a little bit in my presentation, that I would say that we don't want to follow one particular industry. I think we want to take the elements from it. I'll give you some practical examples. I mean, we've had, like I mentioned, 1.8 billion students at home, most of them getting online learning. What can we apply to that? I'll give you an example from one of our customers, which is a major marine training institute, who said to us, the cloud solves, we need you to fix a cloud environment because we have, because of COVID, we've closed we've socially distanced our library, we've reduced our capacity, and our students need to study. So our library is open 24/7. So we've taken the physical library aspect and created it on the cloud by creating free play environments and access to courses and exam prep. I think another element that we can really learn from industry across the world, forget the rich banking guys, I'm talking about the local fast food company down the street, they're onboarding before somebody starts. So even Dimitris mentioned this, the ability to give somebody resources to study and learn and get up to speed before day one. And lastly, I've said that as we just said, then the key there is the cost, Valentinos, is understanding that the industry, the global industries of learning can learn from us because we are extraordinarily margin focused. So in a good way, we can squeeze every result deeper from the minimum investment, because we're not BlackRock and Citibank. We are, as Zora said, we're for a variety of different aspects. So they can learn from us how frugal we are.
Okay, Ari?
I think a lot of the things has been touched already, but I absolutely agree with Valentinos that aviation is an industry that we should look for. And we're already doing this within many projects we have. Because they have a very good way of standardization. Let's say if we want to develop new navigational tools, for instance, we need some kind of standardization so that the crew can jump from one vessel to another without let's say, interfering with the safety of the navigation, for instance. So it's easier to understand the products and the tools you actually have. So I think we, as a manufacturer of tools, both on board but also ashore, we are actually looking at the aviation industry to get good inputs on how to do it, because they have had a lot of accidents there also, and have learned a lot from the history. When it comes to, let's say, what others can learn from the maritime side of it, I think that we are a very complex type of business with many different types of customers. Like you mentioned, Carnival Cruises, for instance, and tankers and bulkers and everything. So it's not easy to find a single solution that fits all, but you can find a pretty good one, and you need to adapt. So we need to be flexible. So I think that the flexibility is something others can learn from the maritime business.
Okay, Dimitris?
Of course, I agree with the previous co-speakers about what is mentioned. I would like also to add something from our perspective, let's say, as a glass society and keeping the regulations. We're all familiar that with the new emission-free and emission reduction regulations that coming into force the next years, I think that shipping industry has to learn a lot about automotive, because all this kind of efficiency, all this kind of emission reduction, automotive is, let's say, the pioneer in this kind of technologies. And we see that slowly, all the manufacturers are trying to adopt these kind of things to the shipping industry and make more green and more efficient engines, not only in terms of the emissions, but also in the reduction of the oil, because it's a cost, a huge cost for the shipping operators, the consumption of the oil.
Okay, Joyce?
I don't have to add a lot, because I totally agree with what my panelists said. But for sure, what I admire from other industries is their passion to innovate. Sometimes I see, because they are not so conservative, and we are talking about bigger players like, for example, Siemens, giants with a lot of resources. Their passion to innovate and their strategy, I admire this. And what shipping can teach is that, because it's the perfect, let's say, competitive model, we compete with each other. It's how agile we are to adopt new challenges. And for sure, we are doing this by being conscious.
Okay, and now, as we have to, let's say, conclude the panel, I would like to ask my last question. I would like to just take your crystal ball and give me your views. My question is, if you could change one thing about shipping that would have an immediate or a profound impact as an industry to accelerate this whole digitization journey. So the question is, if you could change one thing that would have either an immediate or a profound impact, what would it be to accelerate this digital, let's say, journey or digital transition? Valentinos.
I will answer directly and from the educational technology sector, what we are dealing with, what we have expertise from. What I will change today is in terms of competence management of our seafarers, of our global crew. Instead of thinking technology and new job description, new skill sets and new positions, to think how we're going to reskill the existing crew today in order to achieve what's coming in the future. We need to remember that those seafarers who are going to be dealing with artificial intelligence, who are going to be dealing with autonomous ships, but are those seafarers that are not just new positions. Of course, new positions will open, but they're not enough.
I know. One interesting thing, I don't know if you have any sort of feedback on that. I haven't seen any survey over the course of the years how many years seafarers stay in sea, because The seafarers of today are not the seafarers we had 10 years ago or 20 years ago. These seafarers entered the ships, went across the ranks and now are ashore. Maybe now they're doing something else. I haven't seen any sort of survey with details of how this progression goes and how many years they stay in the industry, how many years they sail, and that would be interesting because what you say is extremely useful to reskill the existing workforce, and it won't be the same after, let's say, 10 years. Do you have any sort of feedback, any data on it?
I also don't have the exact data on how many years they stay. What is interesting though is that the years of service decreased 12% over the last 10 years, which means seafarers now tend to go on board and go ashore faster. So they want to be with their families, or they want to deal with different sectors within the maritime industry, which means those seafarers are the ones who will start from the wheel and they will end up to ashore, controlling the autonomous ship, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. James.
Yes, somewhat aligned with Valentinos was saying. What I would change would be an acceptance of what I predict to be is how dramatic the change of digitalization is going to be upon the crew and skills. And like Valentinos said, there is a change of skills. Some are going to become automated around physical strength and manual dexterity and manual precision into more critical thinking skills and visualization of data to understand comprehending more complex data flows as more and more of the ship becomes automated, and recognizing that's obviously the efficiency of the whole and optimization of the whole vessel performance. But the next generation coming into marine training schools and institutes and cadets are ready for that. Even if they've come from a very rote education system, we must remember the demographics of our crews. Many of them come from a very much remember this, but these are digital natives. So what if I could change anything, it would be to speed up the acceptance that we can, using digital technology, we can easily, didn't say it's simple, but we can easily shift how we train and how we can scale delivery of training for the next generation of mariners, because it's going to happen really quickly. Just to finish, like I said in one of those early slides, the term e-learning is 23 years old. And in the last 12 months, we've had a bigger change in the last 400 years. So it's coming. I would change not the acceptance, but the willingness to just jump and act fast.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm just to let's say, to add to what you said, if someone said 5 years ago, cloud simulation, take the simulators and do it in a cloud simulation, the majority of those who hear that would say that's science fiction. It won't happen in 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Instead, my customers said they weren't talking about cloud simulation. They said, I need a library open 24 hours a day. Well, technology bends to what we need.
Fully agree. Just to add to what you said, Arild, your views, what would you change?
The first thing I would like to change, of many things, is with increased, let's say, digitalization and increased digitization, we will also need to have increased, let's say, the possibilities or solutions for good communications. Today, we are talking about the same thing we did 10 years ago during the conferences we went to, if it was digital ship or what else. We were talking about VSAT. We were talking about fleet broadband, Global Express. It's the same today. The problem here is that increased digitization also requires better communication solutions. And also, when we are moving towards autonomous shipping or semi-autonomous shipping, crew-reduced vessels, we need good communication solutions so we can communicate more or less in real time with the vessels. So without the communication in place, we will not go forward in this business. Of course, there is a possibility for all ship owners to invest in good communication solutions. But the issue today is that there is poor coverage in some areas of the globe, so they need backup solutions. So if you go for a VSAT solution, you need Fleet Broadband or Global Express for backup, which has an extremely high price. And if you want good bandwidth for VSAT, that's also incredibly expensive today. So we need to develop good communication solutions that will also drive this forward. Thank you.
Dimitris?
Well, I believe that what needs to be changed is the perception of the people that have in this digital era. I believe that, as I say many times, that without people in the shipping and that can use this kind of digital technology, then an artificial intelligence robot or something else cannot give you very accurate and very well-managed decisions in order to follow. People have the ability to connect things together and to make results that are applicable each time to every possible situation. So I believe that the obstacle in this digital transformation has to do with the perception that the people have for the digital solutions, that let's say a little bit afraid of using these softwares and these tools, because I think that in the back of their mind is that the robots will replace their presence in the shipping company and their job will be lost. So we believe that the people, well-trained, of course, people, are in the middle and are a core in this journey of digital transformation.
Okay. And Joyce, you have the last word. What would you change to speed up this digital, transition?
First of all, this will make shorter the line, the communication between shore and vessel. This for sure one big benefit. But it's not only one thing. For sure, we need better infrastructure, as already Arlie said. Standardization, mindset change, training, and be among us more transparent and exchange views, because traditionally we think that if we had some elements, we'll be more competitive than the others, which is not true at the end.
Yeah.
It's a zero-sum game.
I fully agree, Joyce, and I think the industry needs a little bit, yes, as you said, more collaboration and more transparency, because at the end of the day, there's an African proverb: if you want to go, there's something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go with the others. So it won't happen if we don't collaborate. It won't happen. So I can fully agree. I would like to thank you all for your contribution and presentations. I would like to thank our viewers and trust we see you in one of our future events. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.